Welcome into podcast 41 of Ears to Hear podcast. The more you know.
Knowledge is power. Oh wait, no, knowing, what is it? Knowing is half the battle?
Yes.
There we go.
Knowing is half the battle. The battle is the other half of the battle.
Yep. I know, the battle gets divided up so many ways. When's the actual battle? All I know is knowing is half. Thanks, G.I. Joe.
That's right.
Have I missed it? Have I missed the battle?
Glad to have you guys here amongst all the litter of toys of my children.
Yep. Our podcast studio is a little colorful today.
It feels like home to me.
Exactly. We all have small children.
Yep.
Yep. But yeah, we're gathering together. We have a pretty awesome topic today. This is a study that has been very new to me. As much as Alan's mentioned it before, it's not something I'd proactively studied.
Kimball's heart was hardened.
Exactly. We've opened his mind, Alan.
He had a heart of stone.
It's sheer ignorance, I assure you.
It's actually been pretty cool. I mean, we're beating the bush around, but because me and Alan have been talking about this stuff for years, and then when you came across it, your excitement about it is really cool.
It reignites our excitement.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool too because so the church has no official stand on this.
Yeah,
right.
Purposely so,
but
they kind of do.
Yes, if you look at enough quotes.
Yeah, if you were to talk to any of the 12,
they'll give you a little smirk and turn away. Right.
Yep.
But, there's that temple recommend question. Do you support any doctrine or practice that's contrary to the church? Well, here's one today that we're going to share with you that I 100% believe should be a teaching of the church.
Yes.
Yes. Honestly, yes.
But obviously, as always with this podcast, we are not official church representatives.
Yep. We can say what we want.
Yes. Which is awesome because we can say whatever the crap we want.
Yep.
And we can say crap on a podcast.
Exactly.
Yep.
But we are, on my mission, I had someone once who was like, yeah, so what were the Book of Mormon people? Where were they? And I'm like, oh, it was like the Mayans and Aztecs.
Yep. I think back to seminary days, right?
Yeah, that was pretty dang official,
that's
back
what I
in
thought.
the day.
Yeah. When they hand you that map of the Book of Mormon in seminary class and it looks just like the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yes.
Exactly.
The narrow neck of land.
Yep.
And, so I'm saying that and the person's like, whatever, those people were horrible. They were all murderers and just like immediately it turned them off.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I guess I don't know much about Mayans or Aztecs.
Yeah.
Sure enough, they were vicious societies.
Yes.
They were absolutely brutally murderous, sacrificing ritualistically women and children, cannibals in cases.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a horrible history.
They weren't very nice.
No.
They didn't play well with others.
No. And then, hearing, this isn't, the Book of Mormon isn't Central America, hearing that it was, America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, one, that lines up a little better with Scripture.
Yep.
But then stumbling across Wayne May and Rod Meldrum and a whole bunch of their videos.
Nephite Explorer. That's been a really good one, too.
Yeah. Michael P., his YouTube channel is awesome for this.
Just fantastic stuff,
So, that's what we're getting into today is the beauty of watching Scripture be proven true.
Yep.
The Hopewell peoples, the Adena peoples, we're going to get into all of that today. Yeah. But first, let's start with just a simple recap. What is the history of the people of the Book of Mormon? What is alleged there? First, you start out with Lehi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting in Jerusalem area.
Right. 600 BC.
600 BC. And he and his family sail on a boat. They build a ship after the manner of who knows what because God inspired them.
Yep.
They sail who knows where, and somehow they end up in, quote-unquote, the Americas. They spread all over the land. They meet with another people who also had spread over the land. They replace a civilization that had been spread over the land that got wiped out. And there's the narrow neck of land reference. There's this land had elephants and horses and sheep and wheat and corn and scimitars and swords and headplates and breastplates and
Curlums and cummums.
curlums and cummins,
Whatever those are.
Whatever those are.
And on and on. Some of these Book of Mormon evidences of they built temples, they built altars, they had their defensive places that they threw up land to defend, and they had their designs of war. They had their wars where they had so many bodies that they would heap them in a pile and throw dirt over them, essentially, just to. And some where there was just too many bodies to even do that, and it
would stink up the entire land.
Yep. So you have all these things in the Book of Mormon, and then you get to our day, and you have literally thousands of anti-Mormon propagandas of, hey, none of this stuff is showing up in an archaeological study.
Right.
So the Book of Mormon isn't true. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you get to our day, and that's a serious struggle for a lot of members of the churches.
Yep.
We just take it on faith that this actually happened in the Americas, but where is the evidence?
Yeah. Well, and especially when you can go, I don't know if you guys saw the, I can't remember his name, but he basically went and did a scuba dive expedition thing, born-again Christian, super cool guy, who has some archaeological training, and he went and did a scuba dive over in the Red Sea.
Okay.
Over where the children of Israel crossed over, found some really cool things at the bottom of the ocean area there. Basically, and this is just a little bit of a side note, but I think it ties into what we're going into here, because you have the bottom of the ocean, which goes up to a kind of a hill, right? Mm-hmm. Goes up a lot, comes up, makes a nice little bridge, a nice little plateau bridge.
Still underwater,
and then it goes back down on the other side. That happens to be exactly where they passed, right? Mm-hmm. So that ocean, however the Lord did it, he parted the water right there on that plateau so that the children of Israel could cross over on that plateau, right? Yep. So that area is where he took and did the scuba dive, and he found some interesting stuff at the bottom of the ocean down there.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you find like
golden chariot wheels and stuff like that? Yeah, and really unnaturally formed what's it called, coral?
Yeah,
where it's basically in the shape of a wheel and an axle and stuff like that. Like super interesting stuff. I think they even found like evidence of horse remains and stuff like that, like basically bones that have been like somehow preserved. I don't know the science behind it, but it was cool to watch.
Yeah.
But when we at a time when you can do that, and also they've gone over and they've pretty dang sure that they found Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Yeah.
And you can, to this day, you can take that chalky substance and it's extremely flammable, right? Mm-hmm. So all that brimstone and stuff. So they're in a day and age where we have things like that, right?
Yeah. The Bible's getting proved true.
Yes, it's getting proved true.
What about us?
Yeah, exactly.
What about us?
Exactly. Because we, just like Kimball's saying, like we're reading this stuff, and like I'm sure you were the same way on your mission. It was like, it was the Aztecs and the Mayans and stuff, Really just kind of funny, if we go to the scriptures, right? We go to 2 Nephi chapter 1, verse 7. This one verse of scripture, and this is one among many in the Book of Mormon, right? Mm-hmm. Especially at the beginning, where it completely blows a hole in the whole Mesoamerican theory. Where he says, "Wherefore this land is consecrated unto him whom he shall bring. And if it so be that they shall serve him according to the commandments which he hath given, it shall be a land of liberty unto them. Wherefore they shall never be brought down into captivity, if so it shall be because of iniquity. For if iniquity shall abound, cursed shall be the land for their sakes, but unto the righteous it shall be blessed forever. So just taking that one verse of Scripture,
Yeah.
where is there a land of liberty anywhere, north or south, east or west of the United States of America? Ever,
Cuba.
Cuba, yeah. Libertas, right? That's what they're saying right now.
Yep. You heard it here first. Book of Mormon took place on Cuba.
Yeah. The entire island of Cuba.
But no, that's a very real point.
Yes.
Is where do you actually find quote unquote freedom?
Yeah.
Name for me a nation that truly honors the principle of freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
Name one.
Yeah. It doesn't.
It's America, or at
Yeah.
least until this week when they're like, "Hey, if you say the wrong thing on social media, we're going to ban you from every social media."
Yep.
Yep.
Until you get to our generation, America was land of the free with speech.
Yeah.
It's land of the free with religion. It's land of the free with so many things, and you would never claim that of Mexico,
Yeah.
of Honduras, of Guatemala.
Well, I think it's also key in there that it says a land of liberty.
Yeah.
Right? And liberty's not just freedom. Liberty is God is involved in that, exercise of free will. And once again, up till maybe this generation, that really came to define America, in God we trust, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yep.
People may have had issues, but we've been saying that for a long time here.
Laus Deo, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Well, you get a lot more scriptures, especially from Nephi, prophesying of the coming of Columbus, as we've identified it, and that's been said in conference several times. It's church doctrine.
Yep.
You have the actual establishing of the Constitution being led by God, established in the Doctrine and Covenants, and then you also have in the Doctrine and Covenants God telling Joseph Smith, send these several missionaries, not to the Native Americans, God never uses that word, to the Lamanites.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And where do those Lamanite missionaries go?
Go just west of Missouri.
Yeah.
Yep. Just to the Indians over across, just next to them.
And they ended up going towards New York as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So these missionaries took their trek that way.
Yeah.
Well, and important point too about that time frame is that was the western border of the frontier of America.
It was.
Yeah.
We didn't have it
I was
didn't go
gonna
to California.
Yeah,
Well,
that was the end.
Yeah.
A lot of the Indians had been pushed out of the land to that point.
Yeah, exactly. They've been kept moving west, right? As we've took their land because they had it there first.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even Joseph Smith, he at one point spoke to the natives, and because the translator was getting it wrong, used the gift of tongues and spoke to them in their tongue.
That's so cool.
Yep.
Oh, brother Joseph.
And
Prince of the Spirit.
And he told, I think it was the fox and the oh, stink, I'm trying to remember the second word, but there's a tribe.
Is it Micmac?
I forget. It's
There's,
like the fox.
there's like Fox, Sioux. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, there's the Sioux, there's the Cherokee, there's a few others, and then there's one that's like the fox and the something.
Mm-hmm.
He went and talked to them, and he's like, "Hey, this book I have is the book of your ancestors."
Right.
Yeah.
And so Joseph Smith has several of these evidences. One of the evidences against Joseph Smith alleging it was from an article published in the paper at the time, alleging that, oh yeah, there's this discovery of these lands in the middle Americas and these records. Well, that gets quoted quite often from people who are like, no, it's Central America, but because look, Joseph Smith was editor of this paper and signed off on this. It turns out Joseph Smith wasn't in town when that paper
was in hiding.
Yeah. When that particular article was edited and written,
right?
But he was still "quote unquote" editor in chief of the paper.
Well, I much rather would take when Joseph's walking across the plains with Zion's camp and he's pointing out things and saying, "Oh yeah, that's where that took place," and here's Zelph, the righteous Lamanite, just buried right here, and it's like, I think I'd rather take that information than over a supposed possible paper that he may have signed off on, may have not have, Like, he didn't really mince words. Like, you go back and study what he had to say And he was talking to the saints all the time, this land, talking about America as being the staging point for the Book of Mormon, which honestly, everyone who's listening to it probably right now is having this wonderful feeling like that just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It just fits that the Book of Mormon's actually talking about this land.
Well, you read too. I mean, you got to read Nephi's description, that prophecy of this land and its fate.
Yep.
And obviously, he stops at a point because it's essentially Book of Revelation territory. At one point, Joseph Smith's told specifically, hey, don't go any further in what you write. And so he shares a bunch of Isaiah chapters that are also prophecy of this land. But the things that Nephi relates, it's incredibly relevant in describing the progress of America, becoming a free nation, having the Bible and the Book of Mormon come together as one book. All of this happening right in America.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to, and this is where Rod Meldrum and Wayne May and their archaeological studies come in. These guys didn't do all the studies either. They are taking other legitimate archaeologists who are not members and taking all of their studies and findings, putting it together and saying, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
That's an important point too, non-LDS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's where you get to the Hopewell Indians. So Hopewell was the man, he was basically just a farmer, owned a bunch of land.
Mm-hmm.
And on his land, they found a large mound. And they're like, hey, this doesn't look natural. They start excavating it. And they find bones. They find bodies. They find artifacts. And so they begin to do their archaeological studies. This is all like mid-1800 kind of stuff. Very few of this archaeological study happened in the 1700s. And they record there's this civilization of Native Americans that have a totally different style of way of life than the natives that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
They build these huge mounds. They end up finding there's something like several thousand of these mounds just in like the Ohio Greater Lakes region.
Yeah.
Let alone there's actually all over.
There's actually a city in Ohio called Little Cairo because of all the artifacts that they find.
Yeah.
Called Little Cairo.
That makes sense.
And among all these artifacts, they're finding ancient Hebrew writings.
Yeah.
Now, the Smithsonian kind of buries all this stuff.
Yeah, they have no idea what to do with it.
So that was,
or if they did, they know that it'll help prove the cause of God. So Satan's keeping it under wraps.
That was part of the rabbit hole I went down. Was the Smithsonian?
Yeah, what they have.
Yeah, and two, because they came in and they took a bunch of the artifacts from the Native American tribes.
Yeah,
they said no, this is ours. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the Cherokee. I think it was the Cherokee that they had to sue to get that stuff
and they just
back.
Recently did.
Yeah, recently.
Just recently successfully got a bunch of their artifacts
but
back.
It was conditional. So they got back their Hebrew stone, right? Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, we'll give this back. We can't find the bones. They probably destroyed them, right? They said, oh, we can't find the bones, but here, since we're being forced to, we'll give you this Hebrew stone back. However, you are not allowed to display this in upside right, basically.
Yes.
Because originally the Smithsonian had it in a museum, and it was displayed upside down, and it was authentic, clear up until the point where someone who happened to be able to speak Hebrew showed up and said, that's Hebrew, and it's upside down.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as soon as they turned it right side up, and it was legible Hebrew, right, Paleo Hebrew, they immediately said, no, it's fake. Indian tribes can't have it, so the Indian tribe, it's now in their possession again, but it has to be displayed upside down.
Yep.
That's one of the conditions.
Yeah.
No agenda there.
Yeah. It's like, are you kidding me?
Good old government.
I know, right?
Always getting it right.
Or Gadianton's purposely getting it wrong, right? Yeah.
But you also have the Moses tablet that they found.
The Decalogue stone.
The Decalogue stone that has a depiction of Moses in that same Paleo Hebrew and a depiction of all the 10 Commandments.
I've seen that with my own eyes, man.
Oh, yeah?
And it was a special feeling. There was a pane of glass between me and a Nephite artifact.
That's pretty cool.
That was so cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredible.
But the cool thing, too, is chronologically how they're able to date this stuff. Carbon dating, to whatever degree it's accurate, it's accurate a good 6,000 years ago, and then all of a sudden it gets into the millions of years.
Right.
That's a whole different tangent for me.
Wind you up and let you go on that one.
I know, right?
But they date back. They do a lot of this dating based on trees. But they date back these cities based on kind of these structures, the wood that was used at the time in that particular structure. They find that unlike let's say, for example, Mayans that were in like the 1400s, which obviously timeline-wise, you tell me if that fits, you go back to the Hopewell civilization, and the first one they can find is in the panhandle of Florida, right about 590 is what that dates to. And
that's pretty dang close.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of artifacts there of these people who just kind of show up. They don't have ancestors prior. They don't have carbon dating of other civilizations prior.
Yep.
They show up there. They spread out. They actually split and go into Georgia, kind of East Coast.
Right.
And there's a huge civilization there that pops up. And not much later, which lines up with perhaps Nephi leaving.
Mm-hmm.
You got a whole bunch more of these civilizations, of these Hopewell Indians, and they identified a lot based on, like I say, their structures of buildings, their forts. They call them forts. They're essentially mounds of land with logs staked in them to create fence-like areas.
Yeah.
Well, it was very... they were a defensive people, right?
Yeah.
That was like part of their culture, was that they like in the real-time strategy game of life, they turtled up. That was their shtick, was they turtled up basically.
Yeah.
And it was very successful for them.
Drawn inside the shell.
Yep.
Exactly.
Sound familiar?
Yep. Go to places of retreat.
Right. And they're finding with these mounds, they're finding that they're shaped in very specific geometric shapes that are lining up with like star charts and moon charts, moon calendars. A lot of their shapes are hexagonal next to a triangle, next to a circle.
Compass and square, very prevalent in their culture.
You get into, I think it was it Tennessee or was it Ohio that they have that site survey of a land where there's a city that has a menorah. Yes. Laid out inside of the city.
That was by Newark, Ohio.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, coincidentally, the Army Corps of Engineers, out of all of the mounds that were in that area, they chose that one to go and demolish, and they left the other ones alone.
Yep.
And now, why would they do that?
Why would they do that?
Because it's so visible.
Yeah.
That it's a menorah.
It was obvious.
An oil lamp, the compass and square, and next to that, a dig out of the Shem letters of Hebrew. Yes.
I saw that as well. That was so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just evidence after evidence after evidence. Right.
And it's like, how do you explain that, right? Outside of the Book of Mormon, like, how do you get Hebrew all over here in America? Yeah. Right. Without the understanding that, there was someone who came from Israel and came over, and had that lineage, right? Yeah. I don't get, and maybe part of it, I imagine part of the Smithsonian, the people who are actually honest learners probably just have no idea what to do with it. The people that do know, are paid off by Satan, are keeping it hidden under wraps because it will prove the truth of the Book of Mormon, which will prove the truth of Christ here in the latter days.
And proof never quite
does
it, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
You start with faith, and this stuff becomes amazing because you gain knowledge. On the flip side, if you start with the quote-unquote proof, people just fight it. Yeah. They just debate it and argue it. Yeah. But again, as we're laying this stuff out, consider this as evidences And just like
it's spirit candy,
right? Just like with, did Joseph Smith write the Book of Mormon? That kind of idea of, well, it exists, so if he didn't write it, where'd it come from?
Exactly.
There's so much proof that he couldn't have physically written it.
Yep. People do so many mental gymnastics to get around the truth of it.
Exactly.
Right?
But you have to, it's like the plan of salvation, right? When you're presented, you're now accountable. With this information, you're presented it, you now have to figure out, you've got to settle this in your mind.
Yeah.
Casting it aside doesn't do anymore. And so again, you get back to these evidences, and it's just such a cool faith-affirming thing to not only read the Book of Mormon, read all the histories, and in some cases wonder, like, why are they even mentioning some of this stuff? How is this spiritually relevant to just relate a whole bunch of war history?
Right.
Yeah.
And then you see these massive hill forts, and you see these places where there's like a plateau of a form that along this ridge, that's where they put all their defenses, and you couldn't get up to them because of the shape of where these were placed. And then in the back, there was kind of an escape route. There's a few different places where they illustrate, here's where this battle would have been fought. And you would have had these hordes of people funneled in through this path and this path and this path, and it would have been just a killing field.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, like you say, all defensive strategies, all defensive land placement and tactics. As they trace, again, these chronologies of carbon dating the land, you get up into that Great Lakes region, and then the people just disappear. They completely die out, disappear as they go to about 400 AD up in New York. And there's one other record of them disappearing in Tennessee, similar time.
Right.
So a small portion of them fleeing to that land. But that's the entire Hopewell civilization. They date from 590 BC to 400 AD. And all of their mounds, all their cities, the cool thing is a lot of this is buried. A lot of this is covered up, if you want to put it that way. But there are these records from the Smithsonian that have lived, site surveys, and yeah, there was this city here that's now under the lake, but because it was going to be put under the lake, they had to do all these site surveys first and preserve it.
Yeah.
And they find hardened copper swords, hardened copper and scimitars, and these plates that you would tie to your head and plates that you would put over your breast.
Yep.
Well, and two, that just to make a note about that hardened copper, somehow they were able to harden their copper to the point of it not being soft anymore, right? There's something that they did to make it so that
it's a lost.
Yeah, we don't have it.
We don't got it.
We can't
metallurgic
duplicate it.
thing that we can't duplicate.
Yeah, we cannot duplicate that.
And that's why this is so crazy, because there's people alleging that all these copper swords and copper axe heads and all this stuff is faked. Okay, could you explain to me how to fake it? Because I don't know how to harden copper.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me how to do it then.
There's literally no way to fake these hardened copper relics. So tell me how that works.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's an important point too, because the U.S. government at that time, right, with Manifest Destiny and all that stuff coming up, like, they couldn't have these Native Americans having a background like this.
No.
Especially if they tied into, they thought that they tied into the Lost 10 Tribes as well. There were people in the 1600s that were saying this, right?
Yeah.
That were saying, these guys, there's something here, everybody. Yeah. And they tried to make a big deal about it, but it just never caught steam, right? It never went anywhere. But there were people who spoke Hebrew that were Jewish, right? That would come over here to America, and they would go and trade with the Indians and be like, I'm hearing my native language spoke by the chief here. Yep.
Yeah.
That stuff always gives me like the goosebumps.
Yeah.
When people
they had a written language.
They did, yeah. Absolutely. The Micmac, they had a written language that...
The Algonquin speaking people.
And they actually took, so I've done just a little bit of playing around with that, but they took and they translated the Bible. I think it was just the New Testament into Algonquin, and it looks like the Anthon transcript. Like they even did a side-by-side comparison of a bunch of characters.
Yeah.
That were taken from the Book of Mormon and written on that parchment paper, and then compared it to the Micmac alphabet, and it was identical.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can see where there's natural changes, but it like essentially was the same character in some cases. In some cases, it's exactly the same character.
Yeah.
But if they were to take, that's going back to that that peculiar city, right? That has the oil lamp, the menorah, the compass, the square in it, built into the city's defenses and stuff. There's a part of it that they didn't demolish because they didn't recognize what it was, and that was that shin, that Hebrew letter shin. And something kind of fun along with it, I thought, well, what's the significance of that?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Why? You know what I mean?
Therefore what?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have recognized it, right? Because I'm an English speaker. That's why they didn't demolish it.
Yeah.
But, so interesting, the Hebrew or the Israelite priest, right? He would basically do the Spock, live long and prosper.
Yeah, live long and prosper. The two
So
fingers.
he would so live long and prosper,
Yeah,
right?
Spock didn't invent that.
That was not invented by Spock.
Reappropriation. Way to go.
But that's what they would do. They would do that with their hands when they would bless the people and stuff like that. So when he's doing that incidentally is the first letter in the word Shaddai, right? Which is another name for Lord. It's like
El Shaddai.
Adonai. Yeah, El Shaddai.
Amy Grant with that Christmas song.
Yes.
El Shaddai.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is very good.
It was good.
But the temple priest would hold out their hands in this position to give the benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he lift up his face to shine light upon you and be gracious to you, and may he give you peace. That is incredible.
Yeah. So the formation of that letter in a land form was almost like the people were trying to get the Lord's blessing upon the land.
And that's only been done in one other place in history that we know of. That's Jerusalem.
I was going to say Israel.
Yep, Jerusalem itself.
Yep. And I want to say like the Red Heifer podcast, where didn't you talk about like someone who came over from Israel and was with some of the Native Americans, and is like, you are our people.
The Cherokees.
The Cherokees. Yeah. That's right, and gave them an inheritance in Israel, because there's no way to explain this. You must be part of us.
They were looking for a part of their temple ritual.
That's right. Yes.
They were kind of screwed. You know what I mean?
It was gone.
It's gone.
Yeah. Thanks, Assyria.
There's not a time machine yet,
and
right?
Weird. They didn't feel like they could just make it up.
I know, right? Yeah. They were like,
every other religion feels like they.
That's true.
That's
props to the Jews, man. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because they're
righteous Jews.
I guess we can't wing this. You know what I mean? So they started searching the cultures of the world, and they found
because they knew that they had been scattered to the winds. Yeah,
and they found it amongst the Cherokee people, and the prime minister at the time said, "Okay, we're giving you guys land. You are Israel." It was proven. Jews. Yeah. It was proven to them that they were of the house of Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. That is goosebumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the Cherokee especially, like they have records. According to I always forget his first name, but he's basically the record keeper of the Cherokee right now, and he is LDS.
Oh, Sean Littlebear.
Sean Littlebear. Yep. There you go, Sean Littlebear.
He's pretty interesting. Anyone who's interested in this stuff, go talk. Look up Sean Littlebear. He's got some fun stuff to say.
Oh man, it is gold.
Yeah, a lot of members don't know that a lot of Native Americans did convert to the church. They just didn't pioneer out west.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, because Sean Littlebear is a 7th generation Latter-day Saint, basically.
Yeah. And he'll straight up, he hasn't been hiding this, that he has their scriptures, and he's just waiting for the time that they're asked to bring it forward.
Well, and he's the caretaker. He's even said we have Hebrew. Yeah. We have Hebrew plates and stuff like that, and we have bark that has Hebrew on it and stuff that we
preserve.
Yeah, preserve in our sacred cave. And they're like, I remember somebody was asking him, they were like, so why don't you bring this stuff out? He's like, because the government will take it.
Yeah,
they'll find a way to take it.
Yep.
Anything that proves that these guys weren't savages, right?
Yeah.
Which is a term used by the government at that time, over 100 years ago. They had to do that, and I think that's what people miss. Is it's like if these people were looked at as people with this rich, incredible Israelite culture
and written history.
yeah, and I mean, we've lost a lot. Like they've lost a lot, and in turn, we've lost a lot because they have lost their culture and been put on a reservation and stuff like that. But when the Pilgrims came over on the Mayflower and stuff, they recognized the Indians of that area, which is again same area, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Plymouth Rock and stuff like that. They said these guys are Israelites. Like there's no doubt in our mind these guys are Israelites, And there were numerous accounts of rabbis coming over here, or just straight up Jewish people coming over here, and in order for them to talk to each other, right? The Jewish guys would be like, hey, well, let us, they were speaking to each other in English with the Indians or whatever language they had in common, French, whatever. And they'd be like, okay, well, let me talk to my buddy here about it. And so he'd start speaking to his buddy in Hebrew, and the Indian would chime in Hebrew, and be like, oh, you're using our religious language. Okay, I understand
I can
that.
speak this.
And while the dialect was somewhat different, they could understand each other.
It was.
It's like various accents in Spanish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and see, that type of thing has been lost because the army went in and just the Trail of Tears and all that stuff.
It's a classic case of justifying, right?
Yes,
we have to demonize the other side so we can get. And I find it really interesting too in our current culture how we've had this counterswing, right, with reparations and all this stuff. And it's interesting that the Native Americans really have been left out of that. They're really not counted into that group.
And my Irish people, man. Where's Alan's reparations?
That's right. But it's interesting, too, because you have the Book of Mormon prophesying that these peoples would be spread.
Yes.
That they'd be, forced out of their lands and killed and et cetera, with this coming of people from the other side of the world.
Yeah, that's really cool when you think about, when you make the connection that this is what the Book of Mormon's talking about. You see the expansion west, you see the fulfillment of prophecy from the Book of Mormon in it, right? It all of a sudden connects a little bit more.
It does.
Well, and it really is like it. I was thinking about this last night because it's like, what a missed opportunity for us. You know what I mean? Like we got basically pushed out of the United States at that time. Just like the Indians were shoved out and put on a reservation. That's the word.
Yeah.
We got pushed out, and they were like, "Just get out of here." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we have
the
so
Mormon
much
people
in common.
hated America.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were ready to go to war at one point.
We kind of had it.
Yeah, and it's like, what a missed opportunity. Because if that didn't happen, and we were allowed to mingle with those Native American tribes and stuff like that, like how different could history have been? They were our brethren in every sense of the word, and we could have had some intense, religious conversations and I guarantee we would have joined with each other. You know what I mean? That would have been so cool.
Well, and the funny thing is you hear all this stuff about Joseph Smith stealing the temple rights from the Masons or things like that.
Right.
And like, maybe you could justify 5% max because the Mason rituals are nothing compared to what we do in the temple. Mm-hmm. In fact, the Native Americans have more similarities with their rituals than the Masons do. Mm-hmm. And so why is there never an accusation, Joseph Smith got it from the Native Americans?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because you would be confirming that the Native Americans had those rituals.
I've never thought about that. That is a fantastic point.
Yep.
I mean, there's more there than there is with the Masons.
Oh, and they understand the meaning more. Right, that the Native Americans understand the meaning and they hold those things as sacred.
Yeah,
and they will not do those things. They have signs and tokens.
Yeah,
that they will not offer in any place except for their lodge. Mm-hmm. There was a member who happened to be, I can't remember the tribe, but there was a Native American member who happened to be able to come back and view a lodge ceremony. And they were completely speechless. Yeah. Because they were like, and I think their mother was there. It was a daughter and a mother. and she was looking at her mom, and her mom was like, I know.
It's relax.
Yep.
You know?
It's like, yeah, I know. And it makes it just, it brings it to life. It brings the Book of Mormon to life, and it brings that culture to life. But I mean, it's still, there's sorrow in my heart that we didn't get to join with our brethren. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they, there's a lot of them that will look at us because we're whiteys, right?
Yeah.
Red hair and stuff like that, and facial hair, all that jazz, and they will, equate us to the people that did that to them, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, it's
Racism.
like they did it to us too, guys. Like we are brethren.
Yeah.
They did it to us too. Our ancestors suffered like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just such a missed opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, things happened the way they did because the Lord allowed them to.
Right.
I envision a world where Joseph lived and was able to move with the saints west, right? And how different it would have been as they interacted with the Indians.
We have our gospel brothers,
Brigham, did what he could,
right?
But he wasn't Joseph Smith,
Right.
And I think there's a certain antagonism between him and the Indians that I think kind of kept things a little bit separate. But Joseph never really had that, right?
Yeah.
And so,
and two. The Indians of Utah, right? The Native American tribes, they're not of those Lamanite bloodlines, right?
No.
So I think that they were, and I don't know if they understood that or not. If the Mormons understood that or not at the time,
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did. I think they thought that they were Lamanites.
I don't think that's been understood until recently with DNA evidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So in 2002. There were people publishing DNA evidence showing that everybody, North, South, Central America, every one of them was Asian.
Yeah.
They connected all the dots of here's their DNA, here's the markers, it all lines up with Asian. And therefore the Book of Mormon is not true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So as all this is coming out, it was brought up to President Hinckley. Hey, what's your response to this proof that none of the people in America's have anything but Asian bloodlines in their DNA?
Right.
And President Hinckley's like, that's not proven yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's not proven yet.
Yeah.
Just wait, basically.
It's like Novocaine. Just give it time.
And sure enough, within a year, more DNA evidence from these Eastern American tribes, the Cherokees, the Sioux, these Algonquin-speaking Native American tribes come back. Their DNA markers are entirely different.
Right.
And what DNA marker do they have? It's called the X2 marker. Mm-hmm. And as they're like, okay, well, why is that different? Where else do you find that? The only places you find that in the world are among the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a credible DNA evidence. And obviously there were peoples among them that mingled with other peoples.
Right.
There's plenty of evidence for that too.
Yeah.
But this specific Eastern U.S. Native American civilization, they have that different genome.
Right. Well, and speaking to that as well, all the Native American tribes, shocker, didn't get along.
Weird.
They had their own civilizations, they had their own tribes, right?
Well, you look in the Book of Mormon, right, where at a certain point they can't coexist as a civilization.
Yes.
They all separate to separate tribes.
Exactly.
And that's happened several times.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's incredible because it just parallels the Indian civilization, the Native American civilization anyway. But when you see that happen, right, you see that these guys, these tribes were always warring with each other, and they took land from each other. They took territory, hunting lands. You know what I mean?
They took slaves.
They took slaves.
Concubines.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, there's a mixture of the blood.
Absolutely. I lost my track of where I was going with
sorry.
that. No.
One of the interesting things that I saw was that in the Book of Mormon, they have this giant river, and they call it the River Sidon.
Yes.
And my mother was relating to me. She's like, "Oh, I grew up thinking that was the Amazon River, and then that narrow neck of land was Panama, and etc." And the word Sidon in Hebrew means like fish river, right?
Yep.
And then what do the Native Americans call Mississippi? It's in their language a river of fish.
Right.
Yeah.
And the landscape would have been very different back then.
Yeah.
The Mississippi itself would have been at times hundreds of miles wide, especially towards the end of it. That's one thing that a lot of people don't comprehend is you're so used to looking at the map that we have that you don't realize that even 1,000, 2,000 years ago, it was vastly different.
Oh, yeah.
The Great Lakes, Erie as a lake almost touched Michigan with a gigantic Great Black Swamp.
Yeah.
And when you look at that area, all the Great Lake area, you see massive amounts of room for a narrow neck of land.
Yeah, absolutely.
In between the two great bodies of water.
Well, and it puts the whole sea east and sea west, thing into perspective.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because it's like there isn't really a place except for the, Panama type area, right? The Yucatan Peninsula where you
walk across with a day and...
Yeah, but see, and then that never made sense to me was the fact that, there's the sea east and sea west, but there's also a sea north and sea south, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like that exists there, and that area can't account for that. There's no sea north and south, right?
Yeah.
That Great Lakes area is tailor-made for that explanation,
really is,
Yeah, there's nowhere else.
No.
There's nowhere else.
And they are seas. They're huge bodies of water you can't see across.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy. Like I remember reading it, as a kid and being told it's Central America, thinking ocean, right?
Right.
But I served my mission up in Minnesota, and I've looked out across the Great Lakes, and quite frankly, and I've been to the East Coast. You can't tell the difference between the ocean and the Lake Erie, really, when you're sitting on the banks of it, right? Yeah. So for all intents and purposes, for the Nephites, it really was an ocean.
Yeah.
Well, and it connects, right? It connects to the ocean anyway. Like they found bull sharks in those Great Lakes. Yeah.
Well, they've also found in these areas where there could have been that narrow neck of land.
Right.
They've found forts like crazy, stretching across a whole section that would have shut off the access to the land northward. Right. Mm-hmm. So you have a whole bunch of these evidences. Again, Wayne May and Rod Meldrum just have a wealth of these similarities, these commonalities that when you delve into, it's just so inspiring. And one of the ones that I saw recently from Wayne May was his discussion about the Jaredites, a people who lived before the Nephites. So again, where's that archaeological record? What peoples lived in the Americas pre that?
Yeah.
That again aren't that Asian DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you come to all these records of a people called the Adena.
Mm-hmm.
And the Adena were great metal workers. They mined copper and ore like crazy around the Great Lakes as well.
Yeah, and they were superior to the Hopewell in their metallurgy.
Yes, far superior. They had steel.
Yeah.
Which supposedly never existed prior to our generations.
We invented that.
Right? No, steel existed in the Native American lands.
Yeah.
And they date, it's again, very common. The Adena peoples date from thousands of years prior BC to 3,000 year BC down to about 400 BC.
Which runs in line with Tower of Babel.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
And these Adena people, it's actually super fascinating. They have this one place that was an Adena fort, an Adena mound area. They had similar mounds. They had similar fortifications with these moon aligning cities.
Mm-hmm.
And these cities are huge too. Like when you think of the way they built these things, it was like the size of a small city.
Yeah.
But it has that hexagonal shape, that square shape next to it, that triangle shape next to it. And one of the things Wayne May said is very likely what we're looking at with all these Hopewell civilizations having similar shaped mounds is that they came along, found these places and said, hey, let's take out these old rotted logs and put in good ones.
Yeah.
And therefore it gets dated to Hopewell.
I think they've even done that with the carbon dating, haven't they? They've gone down and said, okay, yeah, there's a difference in material here.
There's 2 layers of carbon dating
right
in a few of these places. So even though there's only like one of these that's very clearly Adena, there's connections because of
Right.
that to dozens of other sites.
And which makes sense. Like if I came in, I'm not going to build my own crap. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's just repurpose this here. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
And this-
backbreaking work.
Yeah.
And it also gets into, one of the things that I brought up in our anti-Mormon podcast was the Kinderhook plates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd read, the stereotypical discussion of, hey, these things were forgeries and they were brought to Joseph Smith as a form of deception, et cetera, et cetera. So Wayne May looks at these and he's like, no, these are legit.
Yeah.
Look at the, like you said with language earlier.
Right.
You look at the Adena people's language and you compare that to Reformed Egyptians and these ancient languages, and it's dead on.
Right.
Dead on. So no wonder Joseph Smith could read the Kinderhook plates. Again, a Kinderhook plates were these plates taken from this mound. Joseph Smith looks at them once and he's like, I'm familiar with all these languages. He starts to read it.
Right.
It wasn't a matter of prophecy. It was a matter of he could literally read Reformed Egyptian.
Mm-hmm.
This was around Book of Abraham time.
Yeah.
And so he's reading this and he's like, yeah, this says that this guy in this burial mound is a descendant of Noah through Ham. And you compare these artifacts, these records, these things about the Adena people, and they were black.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back to the Book of Mormon and you compare it to that whole people of the brother of Jared. Greater faith have no man than this brother of Jared who was black.
Yeah.
But it also connects to this entire civilization that didn't have the priesthood because of it.
Yeah.
And their rise and fall and warring. And they did mix. Again, they mixed out far, far west with the Asian descendant Native Americans as well.
Yeah.
But you even have evidence that potentially they traveled on boats to England and back and helped the England people start being mound builders too. But you just have wealth after wealth of these artifacts of these people being 7 to 11 feet tall, full intact skeletons recovered from these mounds. Smithsonian has the bodies, won't show them.
I guarantee they've destroyed them.
No, probably.
I guarantee they've destroyed them because it's the same thing. If they admit, we are admitting it, we're proclaiming it.
Yeah.
That these peoples had an incredible civilization, right? High level math, you know what I mean? Incredible.
Well, the shape of the cities had to be high level math and astronomy.
It's incredible, just like, I don't know that there's not a lot of people in our population that could do that. Astronomically would do that. You know what I mean? It's just it's a different civilization.
Well, they were very sky obsessed. For good reason.
Right. Yeah. And episode 17.
Yeah. Go back. There's reasons. Yep.
There's reasons for that. But it's, if they admit that they had that type of a background, then boy, do they look bad, for going in there and going after the quote unquote savages, right?
Yeah.
Destroying
their
lands,
they
their artifacts.
Just priceless stuff,
Yeah.
Priceless stuff. And how much of that oral tradition has been lost to that civilization because of those actions and stuff. It really is just a travesty, It's a huge travesty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was really awesome as well was when I watched Michael P's video of this lady who wrote a book of all these visits to peoples in the Americas and even out in the islands, the Polynesian islands.
Mm-hmm.
All these ancient records they have, these traditions they have of being visited by God. And that was a fantastic video illustrating all these different depictions of and names for this God. The Cherokees called him the morning star.
Yeah.
Like he came down from sky like a star. And that was the name they gave him. And the star symbol for the Cherokee flag is the Davidic star.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have this oral tradition of this white bearded God coming among them and teaching their people And it's just culture after culture that shares these similar stories of this healer, of this teacher that came among their peoples. This lady puts together all these stories. One of them is the origin. So in one place, this god came down and calmed a vicious east wind. And when he did that, the name they gave him was Hur-Ikon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we all get the name hurricane from.
Yeah, that's such a masculine name.
That's
so cool.
But the name hurricane, the name hurricane comes from the Native American tradition of a god who stopped one.
Yeah.
And see, there's things like you have to look for it.
Yes.
It doesn't just jump out at you and bite you, right?
Yeah.
But there's that story blows me away. You know what I mean? And it's direct parallel to our Book of Mormon and stuff. There's also a Native American legend of, there was a war going on, right? And their people were getting ready to get wiped out. They were in trouble. Mm-hmm. And their chief told them that if they had faith in their creator God, that he would intervene on their behalf. And so this chief basically he implored, the creator, right, as they put it. And as the army was coming after them, he basically commanded that a mountain should be moved. This is in America, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He commanded that a mountain should be moved, and they said that the mountain walked like a bear and fell on top of these people. So what story in the Book of Mormon, right, does that parallel to? You guys remember that one?
Yeah.
The brother of Jared?
Yeah, Mount Zarin.
Mount Zarin.
Yeah.
Saying, having, and now it doesn't give us the details. Mm-hmm. It just says that, hey, this guy had faith as such that he could command a mountain to move and it would move.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a direct parallel to an oral tradition from one of our Native American tribes in that area, right?
Yeah.
That correlates with that. Like, I get goosebumps just talking about it, man. That's incredible,
Yeah.
Well, and me knowing all this electric universe theory stuff, it's like, okay, I now know how a mountain could move.
Yeah, totally. It's plausible, yeah.
You have a gigantic plasma current strike from a passing planet, and you could move a mountain.
Mm-hmm. Or part the Red Sea,
Yes.
And one of the other cool things about these oral traditions is they have, like I say, they were able to name him. He's like, go ahead and name me. Names aren't that important.
Right.
And they're like, well, what was your name? What was your surname at birth? And apparently, this god told them a name that was hard to pronounce. But their oral tradition it sounded like Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Jesus. Yep.
And the cool thing is you have all these traditions in all over the Native American lands, including, not just the Hopewell civilizations, but spread further, as well as in these similar commonalities in the Polynesian lands.
Yep.
And this lady's final conclusion in her book is, well, I think Jesus, before he started his ministry, went to the Americas and taught there.
We're going, my gosh, you're so close.
It's funny how this is tied into last week, but the lost tribes, like Jesus went all over the place talking to people, right? So it should make sense that we should have many different records, different peoples about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is an important point as well, because there are things that you'll find in South and Central America where they're talking about a great white bearded God, and it ties into that as well, because he went and visited everybody. Yeah. Right? Like I think that when he says other sheep which are not of this fold, obviously he's talking about the lost 10 tribes as a group. Mm-hmm. But it is my strong conviction that he went and visited every major civilization. Yeah. And spoke to them as well, because
of the descendants of Israel,
right?
Which is probably why a lot of people make the connection with Central and South America for the Book of Mormon. Well, it's not to say that the Book of Mormon took place there, but they probably did have records of Christ visiting them.
Yeah, they do.
I think that it wasn't even the descendants of Israel. I think he visited everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think he visited everybody, because Africa has the same type of thing. Okay. They have oral traditions about a guy like that, a great white bearded God. Okay. Japan China, they all have these parallel stories. You know what I mean?
Wow.
During the same times.
Yeah, I have no problem with that at all.
And I think that's why we got confused, right? Why a lot of people.
Why it's easy to
confused.
make the cross,
because I mean, going to South America, there is stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
There is. Yeah.
There's stuff. That he definitely was among those people. That's why the conquistadors, when they came over, were able to conquer with a handful of ships and guns and stuff like that 1 million people, because they had recognized that, I think it was Montezuma, right?
Yeah, Montezuma.
He went out to meet the conquistadors, and he held his hand open in a very peculiar way,
a very specific way that we might recognize.
Yes, and I'm being careful here on purpose.
Yeah.
Because when the great white bearded God left, he told them when he came again, he would give them this token, if you will.
Yes.
Right? And so Montezuma comes out, and Montezuma is scared because he knows that they have been doing wrong, right? They have gone away from the ways of Quetzalcoatl and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so the conquistador shows up, and he's like, what is he doing? Like, he's holding his hand out. Give him a gift. You know what I mean? Give him something. Give him a trinket. So they came and gave him a trinket, and they knew at that point that it was not the great white bearded God.
No.
Right? But they also allowed themselves. There was so much of the population that recognized these white bearded dudes. And they said, "Oh, they're here to punish us for our evil ways." So they allowed themselves to be slaughtered.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that is incredible. You know what I mean? But you can see, like, that's just to illustrate the point, right? That you can see where people got confused.
Yeah.
As to where this stuff happened.
There's that confusion, and you get it from BYU. Anybody official BYU?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
None of this Book of Mormon stuff happened in
Right.
America. Is all Central America.
Then there's also money tied to that.
Yeah, there is a lot of
research
money. Dollars.
Unfortunately,
A lot of a lot of those guys, and I love Brother Peterson. You know what I mean? You and I have a love for him. Mm-hmm. But
his Book of Abraham stuff's amazing.
Yes, incredible stuff.
And yet he's on this is like, none of it.
I know, and it's like, come on, Daniel,
come with us.
Well, and he's made the point of, you have to make a stretch to say that this happened down there, because they don't have any sheep, right? They don't have any beasts of burden of any kind. No wheat, none of that stuff.
They couldn't have kept the law of Moses.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going with that. And he was like, well, they could have sacrificed this huge rodent that lives down there, right? This huge water rat, basically. And it's like,
now you're doing some gymnastics.
Yeah, it's like, no, they couldn't, because that's not what the law of Moses says.
No. And again, back to the law of Moses, their temples are all wrong.
Yes.
Their structures. So in the law of Moses specifically, they have to have ramps.
Yep, that's perfect. I was going to go into that. No, go ahead, man.
So they have to have ramps because apparently
Deuteronomy.
Nobody wants to wear underwear. I don't know why. But if a guy's walking up these steep steps, you're going to be seeing something.
Mm-hmm.
And so in one place in particular, the dimensions are exact for the Solomon temple.
Yes.
Including the length and pitch of the ramp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, again, Hebrew versus, Mayan, Aztec, whatever the other civilizations are. Their altars down there are all of hewn stone. They're all cut and carved and littered with the blood of innocents.
Right.
And in these Hopewell civilizations, the only place you find it, these altars made of natural stone.
Mm-hmm.
Because what are they making the altars to represent? What Adam did.
Mm-hmm.
But that, again, is another evidence of Hebrew law, Mosaic law, that is only lived out in the archaeological record of the Hopewell.
Right. Well, and it's cool because they have, is it LiDAR technology?
Yeah.
That they've used, and they can see, like that. That's how they were able to see that Temple of Solomon and measure it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to mention that the Temple of Solomon is a rectangle with another offset rectangle connected to it.
Yes.
Right? And you go down to Central South America with the Aztecs and Mayans and stuff, and their temples are not built
They're all
anywhere
squares.
near that.
They're all
Right.
squares.
And two, they come up to a point, and at the very top is where you have that blood sacrifice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is very different than what the Israelites did with their altars and stuff like that. Like that altar, not to throw any shade on anyone who's descended from Aztecs and Mayans and stuff, but that was there to show blood. You know what I mean? To show
And
it was like
sacrifice.
It was like a guillotine.
Yes.
It would be covered by blood by
It
the
would
end of
be
the day.
covered and dripping down the steps. You know, it was a bloodbath.
Yeah. It was kind of like a ramientum.
Yes.
in some ways.
Yes, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It really was. It's a bloody ramientum.
Yeah. How can we put this as vocal and as visual as possible?
Yes, exactly.
But again, like you say, with the ability to fulfill the law of Moses, there's so many evidences that you need to fulfill Book of Mormon comparison, and they only exist here, including with the Jaredites having these mounds that are in the shape of elephants. And elephant similar, potentially mammoths. That might have been what the Kurlam Kummum thing was, is mammoths.
Yeah.
Compatriot to these people. And they not only were they huge and moved lots of earth, but they had these beasts that were huge that helped them move lots of earth.
And they also had dwarf elephants, an extinct dwarf elephant species as well. Like if you have something like an elephant, but that's more like the size of a horse, but it's wide, you can see where that'd be valuable to have, you know?
Yeah.
I would want one.
I'm getting one.
I would name him Wilbur.
Right. Well, and the cool thing too is you see, like you were saying earlier, with some of these people have these records that they don't necessarily want out.
Yeah,
Yes.
But
I wouldn't either.
You have these Native American tribes with written records on metal plates. You have commonality after commonality.
Yeah, where'd they get that idea?
Yeah,
Right. And then I just recently found there is a place, dating back to Lehi, there's a place out in Jerusalem that has just recently been discovered. And BYU has, in this case, invested tons into excavating it. There's a place called Lehi, or the land of Lehi.
Yeah, that's cool as
And
heck.
it's the furthest south civilization of Jerusalem dating back to that time that they've ever found. And apparently rivaled Jerusalem in size of a city. And there was a prophet there known as Lehi who was prophesying to the people, and then just the city disappeared.
I hadn't heard about this. This
Yeah,
is cool.
It's cool as heck.
And they have records of these people, like there was probably 30, 40, 50,000 people in this city. And again, all of this was the city of Lehi, like 60 something miles south of Jerusalem. And they didn't think, prior to discovering this, there was no like Jewish settlements that far south.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, you have this other evidence.
Yeah.
And as we get closer and closer, these things are going to keep popping up.
Yeah.
But what's amazing is, again, 20 years ago almost that I served my mission, none of this was in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Unfortunately,
It was all
would have been great to use.
It was all the two Kimura stuff, you know what I mean? That was what I was looking at on my mission, yeah.
And there was so little evidence even discovered that long ago, let alone pieced together by people.
Yeah.
You know, the Lehi city not discovered. The, half of the connections of the Hopewells and the Adinas and their carbon datings and all this stuff not even discovered.
Yeah.
So, it's understandable. The further back you go in church history, the anti-Mormon stuff changes and changes, because each time a proof comes out, they just change their
They have
arguments.
to adjust.
Yep.
But it's cool in our day to have so many evidences.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Hugh Nibley says. He's like, we're coming to a point where you're not going to get credit for having faith on this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
You know, because Hugh was looking into that stuff as well. He actually went to a Native American tribe, and they brought out some of their stuff that they had, right? And Hugh was able to read it, you know. And when you think about his background, right? He was able to read it because of his knowledge of the languages across the pond, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he was looking at it, he was like, oh my gosh, this is saying this and this and this, and they took it away from him. They're like, hey.
Can't say that out loud.
Yeah, you can't just read this out loud, man.
It's supposed to be veiled. So.
Yeah, this is our sacred stuff, dude. And so they pulled it away from him, right? But it, just stuff like that. He's absolutely true, because if you go look for stuff, and to me, it's a big testimony builder that the church isn't using this stuff, because that's not what it's about, right?
Yeah.
No, the church is just all about faith.
Yes, this is rich, decadent chocolate on top of the gospel cake, right?
Yeah.
This is the good stuff that those of us who have faith, that have had faith, and that we believed it anyway, regardless of this stuff. This is like, well, here, by the way, here's some evidence, you know what I mean, for it and stuff.
Well, knowledge is stronger than faith.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it must be preceded by faith
Right.
to have value.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you can see where, Laman and Lemuel saw an angel.
Yeah.
They saw and were chewed out by an angel, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that didn't do the trick,
They went right back to Mormon 3 seconds later.
Yeah. They wound up doing the, becoming idolatrous, murderers and stuff like that.
I mean, I don't know if is it that time, because this is where I was going to end.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll let you guys kind of finish up, but I'm going to make a relation to something I was just reading. I've been working the glory. It's no secret I've been reading that, right? But we got to the point in the story where they're in Nauvoo and sickness just strikes the community. Oddly enough, Far West couldn't do anything to the saints like Nauvoo did when they first got there to try to settle it, right? And one of the members of the family, the main family, right, is there when Joseph just all of a sudden feels the Spirit come upon him and he's healed. And he goes about the day of God's power healing everybody, right? And the non-member family members there to watch it all. And it's interesting because that evidence, quote unquote evidence for him, didn't create faith, right? But I think, you talked about the chocolate, right? The spiritual candy for us that have the faith, right? These things can also be questions for people, right? It is not going to instill the foundation that's going to bring someone through, the fourth beast kingdom type of trials, right?
Which is on the rise.
Which is on the rise. But these evidences can be questions for people who wouldn't have considered it before, which will then lead them to the actual source of living water to pray and get their knowledge. And then these evidences then become buttresses, right? They become side supports to the actual testimony of the Spirit. And so I think that's really why we decided to talk about this stuff, because it is faith affirming. It's not faith, creating, and it's not the foundation, but it helps, right? Sometimes you just need a little bit of a plus, a little bit of a boost to your testimony for whatever reason, and these things can help with that. They can be a little bit of a support in a time of need, but then this can be fun. This can be exciting, right? This is great for us. Yeah. And so for us that have faith, looking for the evidences, and this is why I think up till now, this has been pretty veiled. The Lord's allowed these people to hide this stuff, right? If he wanted it to be out in the open, if he wanted people to prove the Book of Mormon, he would have had the evidences out there. Yeah. But it's there for those that put in the effort, right? Well, welcome back to ears to hear, right? Yep. For those that have ears to hear and eyes to see, this stuff is there, but you just have to put in the effort for it. You gather it, and it will then increase your faith. It can be a boon to that. And so with that, I'll say, don't forget to walk as children of the light. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Yeah, like you say, the evidences they're not necessarily what causes you to have faith. But I hope it causes you to even just consider, what if this is real? If that's somewhere you aren't there yet. There's a lot of people who I think look at religion in general and they're like, it's just a bunch of made up stuff. Maybe it's a nice thing to do. Maybe there's a God out there. I don't know. And then if you hear these kinds of assertions, all of a sudden it kind of takes it out of that context and puts it into, hey, is all this religion stuff, has it been legit? Is there actually a real religion and a real history of it?
Yeah. Yep.
And some people need that. Some people need to shift their mindset from, is religion something people make up because it's a good thing for them, to there is a real religion, a real God, a real history of it, and weigh that against the measure of what you need as a person to grow and progress. All of us need faith, for sure. Faith and all the outspring of it is what changes character. Learning about all this stuff that we talked about today probably won't change your character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it adds evidence to all of it is pointing to Christ, really. And that's what this is all getting at, is knowing the history of our ancestors, of the ancestors of all the peoples of the earth, can help witness to us that Christ reached out to, influenced the progression of every nation. Even back to from the beginning on down. And comprehending all of that history is critical in understanding the purpose and the nature and the decisions of God. So let's start with faith. You know, read the Book of Mormon first. And then when you dig into all this stuff, it's just like when the brother of Jared, who had greater faith than perhaps anyone who ever lived, he didn't have that faith because he knew. He had that faith because it was inherent in him to believe even when he couldn't see. But God does want you to know. So when God sees that faith, he will bless you with the knowledge. You'll get to see the finger of the Lord.
Yeah.
When you have enough faith in this material, when you go to search it out, the knowledge is given to you. And that knowledge to the brother of Jared was so powerful, it overcame every weakness and flaw. And it translated the man, or at least transfigured the man, that he could stand in the presence of God.
Mm.
It was not, it's an act of the Holy Ghost, but it is not independent of the individual's faith. It's because of their faith that they have that opportunity. And as much as we look at our apostles and prophets as leaders, they are turning around and telling us, look into this stuff yourself. Research it yourself. Get your own revelation. Because the day's coming where that's the only thing that'll carry you through. So develop your faith. Shore it up with knowledge. Pray for guidance from God as you study this stuff. And every bit of this will build your faith. When you get knowledge, you get to have faith in better things and bigger things. And then you'll get knowledge of those things and have more progression to come. I'll say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So as we've closed up here, and I've come full circle in my brain, you know, we come here. It's crazy because we have at our disposal not only the scriptural evidences of two civilizations, well, really three if you count Adam's people, right?
Yeah.
Because they were all wiped out in a flood, which the Native Americans have in their legends as well. They call him Nowak.
Nowak, yeah.
His name was Nowak.
We didn't even get into Mulek.
No,
we
And
didn't
that
even get
evidence
that.
of that.
This really could be a series almost.
Yeah.
But you know, as I come full circle to that, we have these scriptural evidences of these past civilizations that have existed on this American continent. You know, you would have to really, really pull out some incredible evidence for me to now not believe that it happened here.
Yep.
You know, just with that one scripture that I read at the beginning, that this land of liberty and stuff like that, right? It was here.
Yep.
You know, and having the Lord's hand in the founding of this country, it was here. You know, it was a passing of the torch from Manasseh to Ephraim.
Yep.
Right?
Very personal.
Very personal. And it's very, very cool and interesting to be able to study this stuff. And like we're saying, it is the decadent spiritual chocolate candy, that you get after having that faith. But, also important, I think, is for us to look at the situation that we're in right now as a country, right?
Absolutely.
We are following in the footsteps of the Nephite Lamanites. We're following in the footsteps of the Jaredites. And we purposely don't know how it turns out. Even though Nephi saw how it turns out, Moroni saw how it turns out, right? Mm-hmm. Mahonri, I'm sure, saw how it turns out. He was shown, incredible things. Purposely, that stuff was left out of the Book of Mormon because it's up to us to make it happen, right? Whatever's going to happen, it's going to be our fault or our success type thing. Yeah. And I think that is really, that's one of the biggest messages of the Book of Mormon is that, look, here's the Nephite Lamanite civilization, which towards the end was not a race thing at all. It was political.
Yep.
Right?
It's political.
It was political. And then Moroni and Mormon feels so inclined as to take and inspired to take the Jaredite civilization and story and to plop that in there while he's experiencing the end of his civilization, right? Yeah. I think that's incredible to be able to point that out. Is he's like, look, I've seen the Gentiles, I've seen your day, you guys need to know this stuff,
yep. Right?
And so we have this in our scriptures, but how often do we think about it that way?
Yeah.
I think that there is I know, I'm not even going to say I know, there is a false sense of security amongst our people.
Yep. We've been taking the scriptures pretty lightly.
Yes. We take it lightly, and we think that, we know how the story ends, so we're going to be just fine.
We're so comfortable.
Yeah. We're way too comfortable, right? Yeah. I sent you guys that Latter-day Media thing on the food situation.
Oh, yeah. And I put that up on my Facebook for everybody to see, too.
Yeah. So, out of the people that I've shared that with, I think you two are probably the only ones, aside from my actual family, who has not come out and said, "Oh, that's bullcrap."
Really?
Among LDS people.
Really?
Wow.
Among LDS people.
Wow.
Who are like, I don't believe that. Now, look at the stores. There's food in the stores right now. You know what I mean? It's like,
when you awake to the awful sense of your situation.
Yes.
And it's the small and simple thing Casey did.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I was gonna mention that the small and simple thing Casey did. She hit every one of those points in there. It was really great. She did in like 5 minutes what that video does in like half an hour.
And see, for me, that's
like an hour.
It's like a second witness, right? It's like, okay,
it really was.
Yeah, I'm paying attention to this stuff anyway, right? And it's just like, we have been lulled into some flaxen cords here.
When I put it on Facebook, I'm like, this is what woke really means in 2021.
Yes, this is what it should mean, right?
Yeah.
The travesty that
I'll put the link. We've talked about
the link in there.
I'll put a link. It's slightly related, but yes.
The travesty of losing so much rich history in the Native American tribes from the wicked Gentile people who came in and just decimated their populations and their history and everything else, purposely so, because if they were viewed as people and not savages, then they couldn't have gotten away with what they got away with, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't right. And it sickens me that sometimes those Native American peoples will equate everybody of that same skin color to that situation.
Yeah.
When in fact it was done to us too. They are no respecter of persons when it comes to screwing over civilizations and people.
Yeah, we will witness that today.
We are about to witness it again.
It's rising.
Yes.
We're literally watching scripture be fulfilled about it.
I look forward to and hope that when the Lamanites blossom as a rose, that there is a uniting of our two peoples.
Yeah.
Because we share so much in common, not just these ancient stories and stuff like that, but even our recent history and past. Yeah. We were persecuted as well. We were killed. We were raped. We were murdered.
Yeah.
and driven from the country.
Ephraim and Manasseh were brothers.
Yes.
Right? And so I hope that becomes the truth, you know, as we move forward, that
Absolutely.
we become brothers.
That is my sentiment as well, as I hope that they recognize and that we recognize that we are brothers, you know, and that we're in this together and we should be together. You know, we should be facing these trials and tribulations together as a united people under the true, you know, the true order of the priesthood and the Creator and stuff like that. And I mean, what a beautiful thought. You know what I mean? If that goes down, and I hope it does. There's some scriptures that allude to some stuff like that, but I will close that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.